Welcome to MetLife TTX Talks. For those that are returning, thank you for staying with us. And for those that are new, we say welcome. Briefly, my name is Katie Linendahl, and I am best known for my work in consumer technology on top TV outlets. And it is a pleasure to be back with the MetLife teams hosting these TTX conversations. And I'm very excited for this next chat. Coming from a proud military family, I'm so looking forward to hearing from Lieutenant General Jody Daniels. She is the 34th Chief of Army Reserve and 9th Commanding General of the United States Army Reserve Command. She is the first woman to command the U.S. Army Reserve and leads the largest three-star command in the U.S. Army with nearly 190,000 soldiers and civilians. And in this talk, we get to hear how her background in STEM has helped her succeed in her military and civilian careers, while also sharing some helpful tips for all of us. Before we hear from her, I also just like to note that she has so many awards and decorations, including the Distinguished Service Medal, a Bronze Star Medal, and a Combat Action Badge, just to name a few. We welcome Lieutenant General Jody Daniels in a discussion with Robin Gordon, Chief Data and Analytics Officer at MetLife.
Thank you, Katie. Lieutenant General Daniels, I'm so honored to be sitting down to speak with you for this edition of TTX Talks. Today, we'll be discussing topics that are focused on advancing the careers of the next generation of women in STEM, a critical issue that we at MetLife remain dedicated to. Given your impressive military career and your notable technology background, I'm eager to hear more about your journey and your unique perspective on this topic. So with that, let's jump right in. I'm really curious to hear about your experience during that journey in what's really traditionally a very male-dominated profession. And you must have been not only the only woman in your position, but also potentially the only woman in the room in many instances. How have you worked through that process? And then as a second sort of question, how have you seen the Army evolve to a more general, gender equal environment since you've joined?
So frequently, it is not unusual to be the only female in the room. I started, I was going through college. It was not unusual to be the only female or one of maybe two or three in a classroom because I was, math, computer science major. So there just weren't, which is why I joined sorority, so that I could meet other women and have some of those normal female kinds of conversations. But throughout my career, I've been really fortunate having very good bosses who treated all of us as people and as professionals and didn't worry about what the gender was. They just want to see everybody succeed. But I would say a lot of what I do is sort of treat things with humor and go, they really didn't mean to be quite that, make that remark the way they did. And so you kind of reply back in a way that sort of prompts some humor. But what we've seen along the way, in the past, 40 years, has been a changing of grooming standards. Now we're allowed to actually be women. I have a ponytail. I wear a ponytail on purpose so that people can see that I'm not a yes, sir, I mean, ma'am. It's a yes, ma'am, I mean, sir, So yeah, it's a yes, ma'am. But, uniform changes that fit our bodies better, body armor that works better, opening up combat arms to all women. We've got Ranger School grads and they're, being treated as, man, they're rocking it. They're Ranger School grads. So we're seeing a lot more sort of opening of all of this. And it's now sort of enabling more women to move up the ranks. The good news is the Army Reserve has been basically all open to women with one minor exception for its entire duration. So we are 25% female in the Army Reserve, and my general officer population is 22% female. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty good group.
That's incredible. Why would you think that the Army Reserves is a little bit more favorable to women, or there's more gender equality in that category?
Sure. Because the Army Reserve does not have very much in terms of combat arms in our formations. So we have one battalion of infantry, but I've also got combat engineers and aviators, but I've got all the enablers, the combat support, combat service support. So 55% of the Army's medical is in the Army Reserve. Transportation assets, 55% is in the Army Reserve. Civil affairs, intel, lawyers, chaplains, military police, all of those enabling capabilities are those places where women have, do habitually serve even in their civilian careers.
That's really interesting. Do you feel like there's then an opportunity for the Army Reserves to kind of set the trend and the norms for the other categories of military for the U.S.?
Absolutely, because we've got so many women that are already integrated in and doing what it is we do. We're doing good jobs. We're being professionals, and so seeing also that the Army Reserve also has civilian careers also gives us an advantage in terms of toolkits as leaders and as followers. How do you be a good teammate? How do you be a good leader? Because we do it in two different environments, we bring that to bear in problem solving. We bring that diversity of opinions, that diversity of backgrounds and experiences when we come in, so there's less groupthink.
That's excellent. I love that story. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And you mentioned this a short while ago that you stepped out of the Army and went and did some of your more advanced degrees as a civilian. So you did have a civilian career.
Yes.
You were part of Lockheed Martin and some of the work there. How often were you the only woman in the room in your civilian career, particularly because it was so STEM oriented? And how did you handle that separate and sort of distinct from your Army career?
Lockheed Martin's advanced technology labs had a pretty good proportion of women and did a good job recruiting women. So we had a number of great research scientists as a part of our different teams. And I was in the artificial intelligence lab, which I would say was more female friendly than some of the other more hardware, harder science maybe. But we had sort of cognitive science and psychology as well, neuroscience, all working together on a lot of our projects. A lot of communications kinds of skills, interface kinds of approaches. So we did have, I would say, probably more women than elsewhere across different STEM areas. But we had some terrific engineers, and we were very good about who's the most qualified to lead a project by what degree do you have after your name, and what rank are you in the engineering structure. And so bringing those to bear, and everyone was great. It's like, okay, that's the guy that's got the information. She's the next expert on this topic, and that's an expert on this topic. Let's bring them together and see how it works. So we were pretty successful that way because of our diverse range of backgrounds.
That's great. One of the topics of discussion that's more prominent now than I've seen in the past is the notion of limiting bias, especially in artificial intelligence and some of the more advanced data science capabilities that we have today, by introducing a more diverse workforce. Did you see this kind of play out nicely in Lockheed? Because I see you were part of the artificial intelligence laboratory as well.
Absolutely. And having those, again, that different types of scientists, those different kinds of engineers with different backgrounds from different schools and different upbringings really helped us stay out of groupthink and helped us come up with, well, if I connect this kind of thing in this field to this other thing in this field, wow, what a neat connection that is. And so, I mean, we would have these really fun insights as we worked on projects because we did have people looking at problems differently from each other. And I think that's what made the lab so successful. I think that gave me more versatility in terms of what I could do and the positions that I could hold. And my ability to learn and go into a new job was like, oh, she can do that. She's learned how to do something else before that was out of her wheelhouse. We have faith that she can learn something new. I think that helped me be successful.
That's such an important piece of career management too, is just making sure that people understand that you're developing skills that are transferable and that you have the ability to sort of get out of that sort of zone that you're in and ensure that you're carrying over those key learnings that you've had in your past.
I completely agree. I think that professionally having that intellectual curiosity helps as well. And that if you've got a diverse set of interests and you're sort of following those different threads, that helps progress as also. It shows that willingness to learn and to take on something new, and that's well appreciated.
Yes, I would say that intellectual curiosity is probably like the core skill set to be successful. If you don't have that, it's almost a death nail in your career from my perspective. So I completely agree with you. Speaking about your advancement and how you've evolved in your career, I was watching one of your talks recently, and you said something about a person you respect telling you that you could do something you hadn't even contemplated.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you think about your career evolution, you were in a situation where a commanding officer started to have you contemplate becoming a general. And you'd noted how important that was to just even have that idea pop into your mind. Can you talk a little bit more about how, the importance of having people believe in you and sort of stretching your thinking and applying then that intellectual curiosity to reach that goal that you hadn't necessarily contemplated yourself?
So for me, it was a couple of things. One is it was having someone, believing in me and having that confidence in me. And that was sort of a shock. It was like, really? You think I could do that? And so having those conversations with folks that are more senior. So what that has sort of caused me to do is two different things. One is to talk to people that are more senior about, well, what is it you think I could do next? And then also having those same conversations with people that I mentor, in terms of where they could go. So it's sort of opening up people's apertures from, usually you kind of know what that next position could be. You kind of have a good idea of what are the possibilities there, but you may not know 2 positions away. And so how much broader that set of opportunities are when you end up talking to people that are more senior, that have been there, that have done that have seen other facets to the career paths that you may not have had any idea that even existed. And so when I go and talk to groups, I encourage the junior folks not to think about their next job, but the one after that, and to find people that can help them look at what that set of opportunities is. So general wasn't going to be my next assignment. It was going to be a couple of years, many years down the road. But if I didn't go to this particular school, I wasn't going to be eligible. I could never be competitive for general. And so, but someone like sort of making me aware of this and also affirming their belief that I could be a general, that I needed to go to school, you need to do this, was career changing. But many junior people may not know that they're closing off avenues if someone doesn't tell them what those future opportunities could be. So I encourage more senior people to talk to the junior people about those, and the junior to ask about them.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I, in my career, even early on, I set a pretty aspirational goal for myself to reach a chief information officer position.
Okay.
And I think to your point, it really helped me to stage each step in my career with this idea of like, what does it take to get to that position? And then every job that I was presented with, does this actually help further my goals and get me the skill sets that I need? And it was a really great way of making those decisions and stuff, because sometimes those decisions can seem really impossible in the moment. Is this going to help me, or is this not? And having that more long-term view, I think, is really important.
If I could, one other point related to that is, if you look at the studies, and when women apply for positions, they wait until they have, let's say there's 10 criteria. And if they don't have all 10, they may not apply. In fact, they frequently will not apply. Men go, I got 5 or 6, I'm good. I'm going to go for it. And so informing women that's what happens, and to go ahead and go for it, the worst they can say is no, but at least you've given it a shot. But the other piece of that is, how many jobs do you really want where you are a 10 for 10 for criteria? You're going to be freaking bored. You already know that job. Probably. So I would assert you don't want a 10 for 10 match. You want someplace where you're going to stretch, you're going to learn, you're going to grow, you can have that intellectual curiosity. And so I encourage women to go and apply. It's free to ask. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, exactly. How important in that process do you think it is to have women providing that perspective and guidance and example to other women versus, women looking up to men. Do you think that seeing somebody that looks like you in those types of positions is an important enabler to your personal success?
It certainly helps, but I would say that anyone giving encouragement is key. The simple fact that you can do it, even if you don't see someone that looks like you, doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. Just, you can be go ahead and be the first, aim for it. So having women is helpful, but having encouragement, I think, is even more helpful.
Yeah. No,
so that you have that internal confidence that, oh, they believe I can do it. I'm not an imposter. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and in terms of that encouragement, it's probably good to have a variety of different people, gender, your race, ranking, to give that in order to, I think, dispel some of the imposter syndrome characteristics that we might have.
Absolutely.
So I want to change direction a little bit and talk about STEM. The TTX conference is about women in STEM and ensuring that we're progressing that. And we've done a lot of research to suggest that women in STEM is deteriorating, particularly in minority groups. And so I'd really like to hear your perspective on mentoring and getting more and more women into STEM-related fields, both within the Army and in civilian careers. What's been your role? What's your point of view in the progress or lack thereof that we've seen?
So I have chatted even really recently with some younger folks, women, about, what are you going to go do next? What's your next promotion? What's your career going to, what sort of you looking at next in your career? What are you going to study when you go off to school? Because I've been talking to some ROTC and junior ROTC, and you get this whole hesitancy when, in certain areas, some of the STEM, science and math. And I'm like, do you like to solve puzzles? Yeah. Do you like to solve problems? Yeah. I'm like, you're good. Just think of math as a puzzle. Just don't think of it as this intimidating thing with numbers. Think of it differently, because I actually had a gal who worked for me who hated statistics. And I'm like, but you can do this, 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 and this, and this. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then you can do statistics. It was like, I hadn't thought of it that way. It's like, don't let math, the 4-letter word, be intimidating, And so just having that simple conversation, like, you solved this, that, you did my financial reconciliation of this account and that other thing. It was a puzzle. You were finding where weird charges were and others, and you were doing all that. I'm like, you got this. And so again, it's that conversation about what's intimidating versus what's not, and taking the mystique out of it to encourage folks. It's like, just because they say that math is hard doesn't mean that it actually is. That's a myth. So let your problem solving skills go to work, and having some of those conversations to encourage people to just push past the myth and go back into the reality.
There's definitely something about the puzzle orientation of math and other STEM things that resonates with women. That was actually the key for me when I got into technology. I had no aspiration to go into technology, and then I was talking to somebody who was a software engineer, and she's like, "Oh, I just go to work every day and solve puzzles." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that idea," and that the rest is history.
Well, if you look back, interestingly enough, at all the cryptologists, like in World War II, how did they find all the women? Was they sent out crossword puzzles and said, who can solve this in X amount of time? And a whole bunch of women could, and because it was words and letters, and that's how a lot of those women got hired, was because of their problem solving skills, their puzzle skills.
That is fascinating. So on that topic, can you give us a little bit of background in terms of the role of STEM in the Army Reserves, and then maybe overlay that with the role women have taken in STEM positions within the Army Reserves?
I'd say that one thing in the Army Reserve is that that we try to stimulate that intellectual curiosity, and that's going to trigger a lot of capabilities that mesh to STEM areas. So you want to fly a helicopter, You got to be able to, what does it take to fly? How do you learn physics about flying? And you want to be an engineer, or you want to build bridges or roads or buildings. Again, there's some math and architecture and all kinds of material sciences that are pieces of that. But again, it's back to that curiosity of how do you launch an egg, X number of feet and not break it. So you turn these things into puzzles and games that then have practical applications behind them. How do you innovate and get people to think, creatively, and bring, again, those sorts of skills together? So I try to promote innovation and, come up with a hypothesis, take on a pilot, try to see how it goes. If it works out, great, expand it. If it fails, kill it. Why did your assumption fail? You didn't fail. The assumption was wrong. It wasn't you, it was the assumption. And don't take it personally. Don't assume failure is you. Failure is the project. It didn't work. Okay, but you gave it a try. What can you now learn, and what is your next step from that? So having that intellectual curiosity to try something is how we sort of encourage that innovation and that use of those STEM skills across the reserve.
I see a lot of those ideas and tactics being effective in any type of environment. Particularly interesting in Army Reserves when you're doing some cool stuff like you just outlined, but I can see those tactics of being intellectually curious, separating the failure of the project to the failure of the person in any type of STEM related, whether that's in the reserves or in a civilian career as well.
STEM doesn't have to be another 4-letter word. How do we provoke that innovation and curiosity and that problem solving, the puzzle solving, and accomplishing our various tasks?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I think we're almost ready to wrap up. I just wanted to ask a few more questions of you. So just in terms of our audience and them thinking about, maybe there's some girls who are thinking about going into STEM and are a little bit trepidatious. What advice would you give to them in terms of launching into a STEM career and why it might be something they'd be interested in and successful at?
Absolutely. Don't limit yourself. Don't self-limit. If you enjoy something, if you've got some passion for it, give it a try. It's important to go ahead and, there were a couple of jobs that I went off to that I'm like, am I really gonna do this? And I'm like, okay. And I went in and I had a heck of a learning curve, but it was great. I ended up going over to Germany and being able to go down to the African continent, multiple times during the year to see different cultures and places. But I didn't get that. I was very, tentative about actually applying for the job. And they're like, if you don't apply, you're never going to get it. Well, that's true. So I finally did apply, and I ended up getting the position, and I had a ball, and I learned a ton. But so if you don't take that first step, if you don't risk a little bit, there's no reward. So I encourage folks, again, if you don't have that 10 out of 10, that's a good thing. Don't let that be a showstopper. Go ahead and give it a shot. And I didn't get accepted for every job I applied to. There were a few times I went down in flames. But I learned from it, and it was, I just moved on to the next. So, give it a shot, give it a try.
Yeah, that's a really important lesson. Well, Lieutenant General, thank you so much for this. This has been super interesting and very helpful to just see STEM and the role of gender equality in such a very different career path and environment. So really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Thank you very much. Good luck and best wishes to, I try not to say good luck too often. I say best wishes, because it's not about luck. It's about doing well and trying your best. So best wishes to you and all of the audience. And thank you so much for letting me participate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Robin for moderating this conversation. And thank you to Lieutenant General Jody Daniels for your service. If you missed any of the TTX Talks, head on over to MetLife's YouTube or LinkedIn pages to stay up to date. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned.